Florida Travel Guide. The essential stop is cosmopolitan, half-Latin Miami.
A simple journey south from here brings you to the Florida Keys, a 100-mile string of islands known for sport fishing, coral reef diving, and the sultry town of Key West, legendary for its sunsets and liberal attitude. Back on the mainland, west from Miami stretch the easily accessible Everglades, a waterlogged sawgrass plain filled with alligators, a symbol of the state that can be found on college campuses, well, as a game mascot, anyway, and innumerable billboards. Much of Florida's east coast is heavily built up, a side effect of the migration of so-called sunbirds seeking to escape the cold climes of the northeast USA.
The residential stranglehold is loosened further north, where the Kennedy Space Center launches NASA shuttles. Further along, historical St. Augustine stands as the longest continuously occupied European settlement in the U.S. In central Florida, the terrain turns green, though it's no rural idyll, thanks in mainly to Orlando and Walt Disney World, which sprawl out across the countryside. From here it's just a skip west to the towns and beaches of the Gulf Coast, and somewhat further north to the forests of the Panhandle, Florida's link with the Deep South. Brief history. The first European sighting of Florida, just 6 years after Christopher Columbus reached the New World, is believed to have been made by John and Sebastian Cabot in 1498. At the time, the area's 100,000 inhabitants formed several distinct tribes: the Timucua across northern Florida, the Calusa around the southwest and Lake Okeechobee, the Apalachee in the Panhandle, and the Tequesta along the southeast coast. In 1513, a Spaniard, Juan Ponce de Leon, sighted land during Pascua, Florida, Spain's Easter celebration. He named what he saw La Florida, or Land of Flowers. 8 years later he returned, the first of several Spanish incursions prompted by rumors of gold hidden in the north of the region. When it became clear that Florida did not hold stunning riches, interest waned, and it wasn't until 1565 that conquistador Pedro Menéndez de Avilas founded St. Augustine. In 1586, St. Augustine was razed by a British naval bombardment led by Francis Drake, and the ensuing bloody confrontation for control was eventually settled when the British captured the crucial Spanish possession of Havana, Cuba. Spain willingly parted with Florida to get it back. By this point, indigenous Floridians had been largely wiped out by disease. The Native American population that was left largely comprised disparate tribes that had arrived from the north, collectively known as the Seminoles. East Coast Florida. Florida's east coast presents a tremendously built-up mix of hotels, resorts, beaches and affluent developments north of Miami all the way to St. Augustine. This is not to say this section of Florida is without merit, but it's a lot less laid back than the state's western Gulf Coast. Fort Lauderdale, no longer the party town of popular imagination, is today a sophisticated cultural center with a bubbling, increasingly upmarket social scene. To the north, Boca Raton and Palm Beach are quiet, exclusive communities, their Mediterranean revival mansions inhabited almost entirely by multimillionaires. Beyond Palm Beach, the coast is less developed. Even the Space Coast, anchored by the extremely popular Kennedy Space Center, is smack in the middle of a nature preserve. Just north, Daytona Beach attracts racecar and motorcycle enthusiasts with its festivals and the Daytona International Speedway. Just south of the Georgia state line, St. Augustine is the spot where Spanish settlers established the first permanent European foothold in North America. By car, the scenic route along the coast is Highway A1A, which sticks to the ocean side of the Intracoastal Waterway, formed when the rivers dividing the mainland from the barrier islands were joined and deepened during World War II. When necessary, Highway A1A turns inland and links with the much less picturesque US 1. The speediest road in the region, I-95, runs about 10 miles west of the coastline, and is only worthwhile if you're in a hurry. Everglades National Park. One of the country's most celebrated natural areas, the Everglades National Park is a vast, tranquil wildlife reserve, with a subtle, raw appeal that lies in stark contrast to America's more rugged national parks. The most dramatic sights are small pockets of trees poking above a completely flat sawgrass plain, yet these wide-open spaces resonate with life, forming part of an ever-changing ecosystem that evolved through a unique combination of climate, vegetation, and wildlife. Though it appears to be flat as a tabletop, the limestone on which the Everglades stands tilts very slightly towards the southwest. For thousands of years, water from summer storms and the overflow of nearby Lake Okeechobee has moved slowly through the Everglades towards the coast. The water replenishes the sawgrass, which grows on a thin layer of soil formed by decaying vegetation. This gives birth to the algae at the base of a complex food chain that sustains much larger creatures, most importantly alligators. After the floodwaters have reached the sea, drained through the bedrock, or simply evaporated, the Everglades are barren except for the water accumulated in ponds, or gator holes, created when an alligator senses water and clears the soil covering it with its tail. Sawgrass covers much of the Everglades, but where natural indentations in the limestone fill with soil, fertile tree islands, or hammocks, appear, just high enough to stand above the floodwaters. When to go, Florida's weather. Warm sunshine and blue skies are almost always the norm in Florida. The state does, however, split into two climatic zones, subtropical in the south and warm temperate in the north. Orlando and points south have a mild season from October to April, with warm temperatures and low humidity. This is the peak tourist season, when prices are highest. Conversely, the southern summer, May–September, brings high humidity and afternoon storms. The rewards for braving the mugginess are lower prices and fewer tourists. North of Orlando, winter is the off-peak period, even though daytime temperatures are generally comfortable, although snow has been known to fall on the panhandle. During the northern Florida summer, the crowds arrive, and the days and nights are hot and very humid. Bear in mind that June to November is hurricane season, and there is a strong possibility of major storms throughout the entire state. Disney's Animal Kingdom Park. An animal conservation theme park with Disney's patented over-the-top twist, Disney's Animal Kingdom Park was opened in 1998. The park, home to 250 species and some 1,700 animals, is divided into 7 lands: Africa, Asia, Discovery Island, Oasis, Camp Minnie-Mickey, Dinoland USA and Rafiki's Planet Watch, with Africa and Asia being the most visually impressive, each recreating the natural landscapes and exotic atmosphere of these two continents with admirable attention to detail. The best realized attraction is Africa's Kilimanjaro safaris, where a jeep takes you on what feels very much like a real African safari, to view giraffes, zebras, elephants, lions, gazelles and rhinos, as well as take part in anti-poacher maneuvers. Elsewhere in Africa, the troop of lowland gorillas at the Pangani Forest Exploration Trail are definitely worth a look. Crossing over to Asia, you'll get an astounding up-close look at the healthiest-looking tigers in captivity at the Maharaja Jungle Trek. Dinoland USA's Dinosaur is a slower but still exciting ride full of small drops and short stops in the dark while scary dinosaurs pop out of nowhere. When the brilliant illustrator and animator Walt Disney devised the world's first theme park, California's Disneyland, he left himself with no control over the hotels and restaurants that quickly engulfed it, preventing growth and erasing profits Disney felt were rightly his. Determined not to let that happen again, the Disney Corporation secretly bought up 27,500 acres of Central Florida farmland, acquiring by the late 1960s a site 100 times bigger than Disneyland. With the promise of a jobs bonanza for Florida, the state legislature gave the corporation the rights of any major municipality, via a special jurisdiction called the Reedy Creek Improvement District, empowering it to lay roads, enact building codes and enforce the law with its own security force. Walt Disney World's first land, the Magic Kingdom, opened in 1971, and was a huge success. Unveiled in 1982, the far more ambitious Epcot represented the first major break from cartoon-based escapism, but its rose-tinted look at the future received a mixed response at the time. Partly due to this, and to some bad management decisions, the Disney empire, Disney himself died in 1966, faced bankruptcy by the mid-1980s. Since then, the corporation has sprung back from the abyss, and steers a tight and competitive ship that encompasses broadcast networks, publishing and movies, as well as a substantial merchandising arm. It may trade in fantasy, but when it comes to money, the Disney Corporation deals in the real world.